there, welcome to the Millennial Book Junkie. My name is Monique, and today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read in February of 2026. I have to be honest with you, this past month was not the best reading month. I had to read 4 books before I had anything above a 4-star. So that was a little sad, but overall, in February, I read 8 books total. They were 100% fiction, which will shock no one. And my average star rating was 3.59. So sad. There was just something about the beginning of the month where just like book after book after book after book, I was just like, I'm not feeling anything. Like, am I just tiring of the thriller genre? I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much thriller. I mean, but is that even a thing? But luckily I was saved at the end of the month because I did have 2 5-star reads at the end of the month. So that was a nice way to kind of round out the dismay and close out the month. I read 3 audio, 2 print books, and 3 ebooks. The first book that I read in February was Camp Slaughter by Sergio Gomez. And this one was a horror novel. It's been sitting on my shelf for some time. This one is about a group of kids who go camping in the woods. When I say kids, I mean like college level kids. They go camping in the woods and they are confronted by a villain that likes to eat people, basically a cannibal as a villain. And so we follow these kids, I call them, through the forest as they try and survive from this cannibal that is stalking them in the woods. But there's also other people that are part of the story. We also have this guy who is doing like a documentary with another woman who venture into the forest to see if they can figure out what is causing all these disappearances that are happening in the forest where these kids are staying. When I first read this book, the prologue just got me. It was creepy, it was eerie. I got Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes, and I was legitimately scared, like in the opening of this book. But as it went on, I think it just got a little too YA for me. I think it was good. It was very campy, it was like slasher horror. But this one, the characters were a little flat for me. They were a little too one-dimensional. I didn't really connect with any of them. So while it started off really good, I ended up just giving this one a 2.5 star. But I really love horror, and this is a self-published author, which I loved, Sergio Gomez, and I'm following him on Instagram. He has other spooky books, and so I definitely want to give more of his books a try and see if I like them, because I do like campy horror. So I'm definitely down to read more by him. The second book that I read in February was The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkauf. I got this one at the library and I was really, really excited. This one is about a true crime writer who decides to take a little writing break. She goes to this secluded farmhouse and there is a storm. And during the snowstorm, creepy things start happening, of course. The power goes out, and what's even more creepy is that the place where she's staying has a history. In the farmhouse, people were murdered years before, and as she goes about her night, she ends up coming across a small child that she finds outside of the farmhouse during the snowstorm. And so in this book, we come to find out where that child came from, and of course, what that child is doing there, and also like who is hunting this child, and will that person come hunting for her as well? So this one started out absolutely fabulous. I honestly wanted to give this one a 5-star just from the first like 20% of the book. I love Heather Gudenkauf's writing. Like, I have never heard of her, and her writing reminds me of Karen Slaughter and Jennifer McMahon. I was drawn in. It was atmospheric. There's a dual timeline story in this book, so you actually get the background of when the people were murdered at that farmhouse, like before the true crime writer goes to stay there. And I loved that story. I loved learning about what was going on in that part of the story, and I loved the current present day story of her in the snowstorm. I honestly was ready to just shout 5 stars like the whole time. But then for some reason, towards the end, when everything was getting wrapped up, I felt really confused. I want to say like by the 90% point, I was like, we never wrapped up like all these things. I had so many questions. And then by the time I closed it, I was like, wait, I'm still confused by like 2 or 3 things. And for me in a book, if I don't get everything like wrapped up, it drives me nuts. Of course, there's some things that can be open-ended that are purposefully open-ended, but when you lay the groundwork of all the twists and then you don't close up all of those doors that you've opened, it really drives me insane. And I don't know if it was just me. I really went down a rabbit hole on Reddit to try and figure out like certain things that were mentioned and what happened, and I still don't feel like I got closure. I need closure, you guys. So basically, I rated this lower because I felt like my questions weren't answered in the end, but I have to say, this was a really great book. I gave it a 3.75 just because I actually really enjoyed it and the writing, and it was very atmospheric, and I just cannot wait to read more by this author, to be honest. But for some reason, that if stuff isn't tied up in a neat little bow for me at the end, it really affects the reading and the vibe. And so that's why I gave it a 3.7 star. But I would highly recommend it because maybe you understand more what happened in this book than I did. The next book I read in February was Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates. This was my second Darcy Coates, and I was really excited because Darcy Coates is a great writer. And the other book I read by her was The Haunting of Blackwood House, and I give that a 4 star. So I was going into this feeling really good. So this one is about a group of people who take a trip to a cabin in a remote location in the Rocky Mountains. We have our main character, and she's going there with her boyfriend of about 3 months. And then you've got like 6 or 7 other people on this tour into the Rocky Mountains for like a 2-week vacation in this secluded cabin. Well, on the way to this secluded cabin, there's a big snowstorm that knocks a tree in front of the bus that's taking them there. So our main character and her boyfriend and all the other people on the bus, they basically get trapped in this snowstorm trying to find their way out. Eventually, people start getting separated, but they find shelter in this cabin. Not the one they were trying to go to, but this other cabin they find that was close-ish to where the bus broke down. So all these people are huddled into this cabin, and suddenly someone ends up dead, and in a very grisly way. So not only is it cold and freezing, but people are getting kind of picked off one by one. These people start to turn against each other. They start to doubt everything, and they can't make their way to this vacation they all planned. And basically they have to figure out who is picking everybody off. I really enjoyed Darcy Coates' writing. I feel like from the first page, this one really hooks you in with the descriptions of cold and the snowstorm. I was reading it and I was like, I'm dying in the snow right now. Like the opening to this book is so good because you just really feel freezing and you feel so bad for this character because the opening really puts you in that snowstorm. And throughout the novel, you really feel freezing because they are trapped in this secluded cabin, all huddled together and with no way out. And you can feel the tension and you can feel the doubt that these people have for each other, especially as people are getting picked off and they have to work together to stay alive. So it was a really great read. I think where it fell off for me was that I just kind of got bored like halfway through. Things were happening, but I was like, hurry up and find the killer already. Like, why is this taking so long? Even though things were happening that were like eerie and spooky, I just felt like I wanted to find out who was doing all the killing. Thankfully, there was a really good payoff in the end. I had my suspicions and, you know, when I found out like who was killing everybody, I was like, oh, okay, like I can see that. And I really enjoyed like the backstory as to how all these people like ended up together, like on this trip. I loved that part. But overall, it was just so-so. And like I said, I got a little bored halfway through, so I gave it a 3.5. But I really enjoy Darcy Coates' writing, and she has so many books. Have you guys read any Darcy Coates? She has a lot of books, and I definitely want to read more of her. The next book I read in February was The Father She Went to Find by Carter Wilson. I am trying to read all of Carter Wilson's backlist because I loved Tell Me What You Did and The Dead Girl in 2A. So I got this one on audio, and it's about a young woman who has really special abilities. After a tragic accident happened to her when she was a little girl, she now has the ability to remember every single thing that happened to her after the accident. I forget what it's called. I think it's called photographic memory, where you can remember everything you read, everything you see. So she has this power after she has this tragic accident that happened to her when she was like 7 or 8 years old. And basically after that, she became this like savant, and she gets put in like this special school and this special place where Doctors are studying her. Also, after this tragic accident, her father left her. So every year on her birthday, he sends her a birthday card. Well, when she turns 21, she gets this birthday card from him and it has like a return address. And she's like, I'm gonna go find this guy. And so basically she goes on this journey. She leaves the special school that she was in and she goes to find her father. So that's why the book is called The Father She Went to Find. And all this wild stuff happens to her on the way to go find her father. It was a really decent book. I mean, this woman, it was very smart. She had a photographic memory. She could see numbers as colors. It was very interesting to learn about this, our main character. But unfortunately for me, since I listened to the audio, the main character seemed very robotic and a little bit off. And so I couldn't quite connect with her. Even though the main character experienced a lot of wild stuff on this journey to find her father, I just couldn't really connect with it. And I just kind of felt like I wanted something even more worse to happen than what was already happening. And so I think there were times in this book where I was like, where is this going? And I was kind of bored. It was kind of a slower burn. Even though stuff was happening, I just couldn't connect with it. I don't know what was going on. So while I really do love Carter Wilson's works, this one I couldn't really get into that much. I gave it a 3. The next book I read in February was Secluded Cabin, Sleep 6. This was another one that I picked up from the library. This is by Lisa Unger. This one is about 3 couples that go to stay in a secluded cabin, isolated, and it's a super nice cabin actually. It's very luxurious because one of the guys in here is like some tech millionaire guru, and so he invites his sister and her husband, as well as an old flame and her new boyfriend, to this cabin for a few days to chill, relax, and hang out. But of course, things are never that simple. They get there and secrets start to be revealed about what people have been really doing, and somebody ends up dead, and you're just like, what is happening? And also the host of this like secluded cabin, it's like supposed to be like an Airbnb. The host is really shady and like weird, and we get the host perspective. This is like a multiple perspective book, and there's a lot of weird stuff that keeps happening. And then we start to uncover like the relationships between these people are not what they seem. Overall, it was a very interesting read. I feel like when I started this one, it started out like so many thrillers that I just wanted to like close it. But I think it's because I've been reading so many thrillers back to back that I was like, I think I'm just in a weird reading slump. But this one actually got really interesting for me because it has to do with forensic genealogy. And I recently read Long Time Gone by Charlie Donnelly that also has to do with forensic genealogy. But this one has a different take on forensic genealogy that I really liked. So I'm not going to give away too much because it's a spoiler, but I really enjoyed that part about this book. And actually that part about this book saved it for me because I was just feeling really tired of just the way that thrillers start, and it was all sounding really repetitive and boring to me. And so I was really glad that this and the twist kind of like made me a little bit feel better about it. So I can't really blame this book. I was probably just in a reading slump, but I ended up giving it a 3.5. It was good. I would recommend it, and I would want to read more by Lisa Unger for sure. The next book that I read in February was Gray After Dark by Noelle Illy, and this book saved me. This book saved my whole month. This one is about an Olympian. She actually was in the Olympics. She does the biathlon, which is where you are on skis and you're not only going through the snow on skis and racing, but you're like shooting as well. If you watched the Olympics recently, that's what she does. And so our main character in this book is an Olympian, but she gets abducted and taken to this secluded cabin. But what I loved about this book was that you really felt for the character. And it was so timely because she was hoping to go to the 2026 Milano Cortina Olympics. And I was like, I was literally watching the Olympics, watching that biathlon when I was reading this book. So it was like perfect. If you ever want to read a book during the Olympics, this is a good one. But I really connected with the character because Noelle Illy just described her so well, and also just what she was going through. I just felt for her, and I obviously wanted her to be saved, but she also had a little bit of a backstory that gave her depth, and I was rooting for her. And there's actually another woman that is being held prisoner with her that I really cared about, and I was really like hoping for them to get out of there. And I just felt so much sadness for both of them, and just like their whole journey of trying to escape these men was very traumatizing and scarring. And I love that in a book. I love when characters are in tragic circumstances and they persevere. This book really kept me in suspense and 100% pulled me out of the slump, because also it didn't have like a bunch of twists. It was kind of like Chevy Stevens' Those Girls, because it's really just about the story and the journey that this girl went through. And that is what I loved so much about it. I gave it 5 stars. I was like, hallelujah, I am out of the reading slump. I feel so much better, and I want to read more by Noelle Illy. The next book I read in February was My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney, and this one is a very popular one that's out right now. It is about a woman who goes jogging, and when she comes home from jogging, there's another woman at her door that tells her that she doesn't live there and looks just like her, and basically tells her that you don't exist. I don't know what you are. I'm Eden Fox. Like, the woman who went jogging, our main character, is Eden Fox, and a woman answers the door and says, no, I am Eden Fox. And the husband agrees. And just from that premise, you're like, what is going on here? What is happening? And I was instantly pulled into this book. I absolutely loved the opener. Alice Feeney really keeps you on your toes and keeps you guessing and keeps you really drawn into the story. And there's another character who is a police investigator, and she comes to town and she tries to help investigate, you know, what's going on with this whole strange scenario. And at the end of it, there are definite twists, and I can see why a ton of people love this book. But for some reason, for me, it didn't really work out well. I enjoyed the story itself, and I enjoyed Alice Feeney's writing because it is really poetic. But the problem for me was that the twists I felt like the twists were manufactured just to be twists. Like, I felt like the whole book was written just to be like a twisty book. And I'd rather hear a story with a few twists rather than just put twists every which way to make the book twisty. And for me, this book just didn't sit that well for me because of that. And so I gave it a 2.5. I know, kind of controversial because I feel like people love this book, but I enjoyed Rock, Paper, Scissors, but I just couldn't get into this one. I'm so sorry. And the final book I read in February was another one that saved me. It was Charlie Donnelly's Guess Again. This one was so good. This one was about a guy who used to be an investigator turned ER physician, and he reconnects with his old partner who says, hey, I need you to help me come back to the force and solve this missing persons case about this girl who disappeared 10 years ago. And he's like getting thrust back into his old life, which he did not want to go back to. It was too hard for him, but he has to go back and investigate this like decade-old missing persons case. In this book, there are multiple perspectives, and there's lots of people working together and to try and figure out what happened to this girl. Even though there are multiple perspectives in this book, I never was like, who's talking? There's too many characters. It was just the right amount of characters to make you like, this is juicy, because you could see all the puzzle pieces coming together. And the ending, I was just like, what? The twist at the end, I was like, what just happened? I did not see that coming. I absolutely loved this book. I love it when twists are earned, but not only that, Charlie Donnelly wraps up everything. I was like, oh my God, he wraps up everything that he introduces. I don't feel confused. I don't feel lost. And by the end of the book, I was like, I wanted more. I gave this book 5 stars, and I will definitely be reading more Charlie Donnelly. If you guys have not read this book, you need to pick this one up. If this is like your first foray into Charlie Donnelly, I highly recommend Guess Again. And so that's it. Those are all the books that I read in February. What did you read in February? Did you have more 5 stars than me? I would love to know. So let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this content, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.